Austin Winslow, the secretive owner of a popular bistro in Charleston, South Carolina, decides to experience his restaurant as a regular customer. Disguised in casual clothes, he orders a meal, hoping to observe his staff unnoticed. But as he waits for his food, two cashiers engage in a conversation that stops him cold. What he hears could change everything. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss a story. Austin Winslow sat at a small corner table inside the Southern Hearth Bistro, a cozy restaurant nestled between brick storefronts in downtown Charleston. He had owned the place for 3 years, but today, he was just another customer. A well-pressed button-down shirt and tailored slacks had been replaced with a plain gray t-shirt and a worn baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. His usual polished demeanor gave way to the easy slouch of a man looking for a quiet lunch. The plan was simple: order, eat, and observe. He had done this a few times before, blending into the crowd to see his business from a customer's perspective. It was a tactic he'd learned early in his career. Owners got the best version of their employees when they were present, but the real truth revealed itself when no one knew they were watching. The bistro bustled with energy. Servers wove between tables, balancing trays of shrimp and grits, cornbread, and steaming bowls of gumbo. The scent of smoked meats and Cajun spices filled the air. Austin had placed his order at the counter, a pulled pork sandwich with coleslaw and sweet tea, before taking a seat within earshot of the register. He recognized the two cashiers on shift: Elena, a quick-witted college student with a sharp memory for regulars' orders, and Terrence, a laid-back but efficient worker who had been with the bistro for over a year. His fingers drummed lightly against the wooden table as he listened, waiting for any insight into how things were running when he wasn't around. And then, the conversation shifted. "I swear, Elena, if he finds out, we're screwed," Terrence muttered under his breath as he punched in an order. Elena huffed. "Please. You think someone like him actually pays attention? He's never here unless he has to be. As long as we keep it quiet, we'll be fine." Austin's hand froze over his napkin. He kept his expression neutral, but his mind whirled. "Finds out what?" Terrence scoffed. "You sure? 'Cause I don't know about you, but I don't want to be out of a job." Elena gave him a pointed look. "Relax. You think we're the only ones? This has been going on for months. Nobody's saying a word, and trust me, I'm not about to be the first." A slow, unsettling realization crept up Austin's spine. Something was happening under his nose. And it sounded like it had been happening for a while. He leaned back, forcing himself to take a sip of his tea, his mind already racing through possibilities. What exactly were his employees hiding? Austin maintained his relaxed posture, but inside, his mind was in overdrive. He had spent years building the Southern Hearth Bistro from the ground up. He treated his employees well, paid them fairly, and kept an open-door policy. Yet here he was, sitting just a few feet away from two of them, listening to a conversation that hinted at betrayal. He needed more information. Elena rang up an order and handed the customer a receipt before lowering her voice again. "I'm telling you, Terrence, just keep your mouth shut and act normal. No one's gotten caught, and no one will, as long as everybody stays cool." Terrence exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Man, I don't know, it just feels—" Elena cut him off. "Stop overthinking it. If you start acting weird, that's when people notice. Just—" She glanced toward the kitchen doors and then back at him. "Just follow the plan." Austin's stomach tensed. A plan? Whatever was going on wasn't some spur-of-the-moment bad decision. It was organized. His food arrived, placed in front of him by a young server who barely glanced his way. He nodded his thanks but barely registered the meal. His appetite had vanished. 2 months. That's what Elena had said. Something had been happening for months right under his nose. He stole a glance toward the register, watching as Elena and Terrence continued working, their exchange now masked by cheerful greetings to customers. What could they be doing? Stealing money from the till? Giving out free food to friends? Overcharging customers and pocketing the difference? None of it made sense, not in his bistro. He had safeguards in place, security cameras, strict inventory tracking. But the way Elena had spoken, she was confident. She didn't seem worried about getting caught. Austin needed proof before jumping to conclusions. 30 minutes later. He stayed long after finishing his meal, watching every move the two cashiers made. Nothing seemed out of place at first. Transactions were smooth, orders accurate. But then, he noticed something subtle. A customer paid in cash, $20 for a $15 meal. Elena punched something into the register, handed back the change, then casually turned away. But the drawer never popped open. Austin narrowed his eyes. If the register wasn't opened, where did the $5 bill come from? A few minutes later, another cash payment. This time, Terrence handled it. The same pattern. He pressed a button, made change, but the register remained closed. Austin's pulse quickened. Skimming. They weren't ringing up the full amount, likely voiding or adjusting transactions after customers walked away, then pocketing the difference. It was clever. And if Elena was right about others being involved, it was bigger than just these two. Austin exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay calm. He wasn't going to storm up to the counter. Not yet. He needed to be sure. But one thing was certain. This wasn't ending today. 1 hour later. Austin had seen enough for today. If he stayed any longer, he risked drawing attention to himself. He casually wiped his hands on a napkin, stood up, and tossed his tray into the bin. As he walked toward the door, he kept his pace steady, forcing himself not to look back at Elena and Terrence. Stepping outside, he took a deep breath, letting the warm Charleston air fill his lungs. He needed a plan. If Elena and Terrence were skimming from the register, the question now was, how deep did this run? Were they working alone, or were more employees involved? How much had they taken? And how long had this been going on before he finally caught wind of it? There was only one way to find out. 2 hours later, Austin's home office. Austin sat at his desk. Laptop open, scrolling through security footage from the past week. His security system recorded all transactions at the register, but without physically checking the sales logs, spotting discrepancies would take time. He watched closely, looking for the pattern he'd seen today. The sleight of hand, the missing cash drawer openings. The more he watched, the more frustrated he became. They were good. Every movement was subtle, practiced. After an hour, he switched to a different approach. He logged into the restaurant's financial system and began pulling reports. Cash sales versus credit sales, voided transactions, employee login timestamps. Then, he saw it. Voided cash transactions were unusually high during shifts where Elena and Terrence worked together. And not just this week. It went back at least 3 months. Austin clenched his jaw. 3 months of stolen money. 3 months of deception. But it wasn't just them. Other names popped up. Lena, a part-time server, had worked multiple overlapping shifts with Elena. Darnell, another cashier, had logged in during several of the highest voided transaction days. It was bigger than he thought. Austin leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. He wasn't just dealing with 2 dishonest employees. He had a theft ring inside his own bistro. The next morning, 10 a.m. Austin arrived at the bistro earlier than usual, dressed as himself this time. No disguise, no slouching in the corner. His presence immediately changed the energy in the room. Employees straightened up, moving with sharper precision. He called a quick meeting with the manager, Laura, a no-nonsense woman in her early 40s who had helped him build the bistro from the start. She wasn't in on the theft. Of that, he was certain. But he needed her to stay quiet while he worked. "We've got a problem," he said in a low voice, showing her the transaction reports. Laura's eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. "You're telling me they've been for months," Austin confirmed. "But I don't want them knowing we're onto them. Not yet." Laura set her jaw. "What do you need me to do?" Austin exhaled. "Stick to business as usual, but starting today, I want every voided transaction written down and reported directly to me. No exceptions." Laura nodded, her expression dark. "You got it." Now, it was time to set the trap. 3 days later. The bistro, lunch rush. Austin played the long game. For the past 3 days, he let business run as usual. He came in at odd hours, alternating between working in his office and observing from the dining area. If the employees stealing from him suspected anything, they didn't show it. But Austin noticed everything. Elena and Terrence continued their slick maneuvers at the register, voiding cash transactions and keeping the difference. Lena, the part-time server, seemed to play a quieter role, sometimes covering tables and delivering food that, according to the records, was never actually purchased. Darnell, the other cashier, was more cautious than Elena, but he had his moments. Subtly adjusting totals and handing out incorrect change, Austin kept his patience. He wasn't going to fire them outright. Not yet. He needed a clean, undeniable takedown. 2 days later, 2 p.m., it was time to spring the trap. Austin had spent the morning at the bank, withdrawing cash in various bill denominations. If they were comfortable skimming from customers, he'd give them the perfect opportunity to steal from him directly. At exactly 2 p.m., he walked up to the counter, where Terrence stood taking orders. "I'll have the shrimp and grits," Austin said casually, pulling out a $100 bill. Terrence took the bill smoothly, too smoothly. He punched in the order, pressed a few buttons, then hesitated. The cash drawer never opened, just like before. A few seconds later, he reached into his apron pocket and pulled out a mix of 20s and 5s, handing Austin his change. Austin accepted it without a word, his stomach churning. Terrence had just pocketed a $100 bill, directly from his boss. 1 hour later, the confrontation. Austin sat in his office, watching the transaction footage in real time. There it was. Terrence had never rung up the bill. The pieces had fallen perfectly into place. It was time to act. He called Laura first. "I need you to pull Elena, Terrence, Lena, and Darnell into the break room, now." Within minutes, they were all there, looking confused, but not yet alarmed. Austin stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Someone want to tell me what's been going on in my bistro?" His voice was calm, but the weight of it made the room go silent. Elena's expression barely flickered. "What do you mean?" Austin tilted his head. "Oh, you know exactly what I mean." He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and held it up. "This is a transaction record. It shows hundreds of dollars in voided cash sales. Sales that were never returned to the register, and that's just from the past week." Darnell shifted uncomfortably. Lena looked down at her hands. Terrence swallowed but kept his face neutral. "So? Mistakes happen. That doesn't mean anyone stole anything." Austin let out a short laugh. "You mean like, just now? When I handed you a $100 bill and you slipped it into your pocket?" Terrence stiffened. Elena finally spoke, her tone sharp. "You have no proof." Austin pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. The security footage of Terrence pocketing the $100 bill played in crisp clarity. Silence. Lena's face drained of color. Darnell shut his eyes. Elena, to her credit, held her ground. "You set us up." Austin's jaw tightened. "No, Elena. You set yourself up. I gave you a job. I paid you fairly. And you still chose to steal from me. All of you." No one spoke. Austin exhaled. "You're done here, all of you. Your final checks will be mailed. Get your things and go." For the first time, Elena's confidence cracked. "You're really firing us?" Austin met her gaze. "You fired yourselves." She held his stare for another second before scoffing and storming out. One by one, the others followed. Austin stayed in the break room for a long moment, the weight of what had just happened settling in. Finally, he turned to Laura, who had watched the entire thing unfold. "Hire better people," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. Laura smirked. "On it, boss." 1 week later. With the thieves gone, things at the Southern Hearth Bistro felt different. Lighter. The new hires were hardworking and honest. The cash register numbers balanced out perfectly for the first time in months. And Austin? He sat at his usual corner table, enjoying a meal he didn't have to question, knowing that his bistro was finally back in safe hands. Elena and the others thought they could outsmart the system, but dishonesty always comes to light. Trust is the foundation of success, and when you break it, you lose more than just a job. You lose your integrity. Always choose honesty, because the truth will catch up with you. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notification to be the first to know when the next story drops.